When Zagan, a formidable sorcerer, ventures into an auction for the possessions of the deceased Archdemon, he anticipates uncovering potent relics. Yet, amidst the array of items, he is captivated by the presence of Nephilia, a rare white-haired elf being auctioned as a slave. Zagan impulsively spends his entire fortune to acquire her by an immediate and undisclosed attraction. However, Zagan faces a challenge. He struggles with social interactions and expressing his emotions. Will he be able to overcome his social issues and express his love for Nephilia? The story begins with a soldier named Myers assaulting a girl. She demands to know why, only to discover that the soldier is actually a sorcerer in disguise. Using his knife, the sorcerer tears the girl's clothes and mentions something about a living virgin's face being important. Before the sorcerer can do more harm, a man named Zagan sneaks up from behind and grabs him. Zagan, the owner of the garden, demands to know why the sorcerer is causing trouble. Realizing he's in Zagan's territory, the sorcerer offers his research data in exchange for his freedom. Zagan refuses, stating he won't tolerate sorcery that involves harming others, and promptly dispatches the sorcerer. Witnessing the violence, the girl faints, and Zagan worries he may have gone too far. He restores everything to how it was, hoping the girl will think it was all a dream. Noticing a cross necklace on the girl, Zagan realizes she's associated with the church, enemies of sorcerers. Despite saving her, Zagan knows he'll likely be blamed for the attack but decides he doesn't care. He attempts to teleport the girl to safety, but someone's magic interferes with his spell. Zagan suspects it's the work of Barbaros and wonders if he's interrupted something. Zagan explains that he was just dealing with a troublemaker in his yard, and Barbaros notices the girl lying nearby has a good amount of mana. Barbaros wonders if Zagan plans to use her for a ritual sacrifice, but Zagan assures him that's not his style, and promptly teleports the girl away. Barbaros expresses disappointment, suggesting Zagan should have let him have the girl if he wasn't going to use her. Zagan brushes off the comment, saying he doesn't have time for such nonsense and needs to go to bed after staying up late reading sorcery books. As Zagan tries to leave, Barbaros stops him, suggesting he could wake up by tweaking his brain with adrenaline. Zagan retorts that such sorcery is what caused Barbaros to have his messed up appearance. Barbaros defends body manipulation as basic sorcery to maintain health and longevity, although they still have a limit of about 1,000 years. Changing the subject, Barbaros reveals that one of the archdemons named Marcosius is dead, sharing interesting news with Zagan. Zagan is surprised to hear this news, explaining that becoming an archdemon grants immense mana and authority over lesser sorcerers. Archdemons are considered the top of the sorcery hierarchy, and out of the 13 archdemons, the one who lived for 1,000 years recently passed away. Barbaros mentions a significant auction happening in Marcosius's territory, where the late archdemon's belongings will be up for sale. The scene shifts to Zagan heading to Marcosius's territory with Barbaros, realizing that Barbaros only informed him about the auction because he wants to borrow money. Barbaros suggests he might buy the legacy himself, but Zagan finds it unfair. Barbaros argues that Zagan is the only one who would lend him money, and if he does, he'll help him meet some nice girls. Zagan brushes off the idea, saying women cause more trouble than they're worth, and notices the city guards acting nervously. Barbaros explains that the city is tense due to a series of kidnapping, with some foolish people snatching women for sorcery experiment. Zagan finds this dangerous, noting it's akin to provoking the church. Barbaros speculates they might be attempting to summon a real demon, though Zagan considers it mere folklore. Descending underground for the auction, Barbaros reveals that Zagan is under suspicion for the kidnapping. Zagan denies involvement, stating he has no interest in such dark sorcery. Barbaros remarks that orchestrating the kidnappings would be beyond Zagan's capability, as he lacks the necessary allies. Arriving at the auction, Barbaros introduces the prominent figures present, including Valefor the Apparition, Gremory the Enchantress, and Chimerus the Black Blade. Zagan explains that these second names are like titles for sorcerers. Barbaros informs Zagan that they are candidates to become the 13th Archdemon, now that old Marcosius is gone, and he himself is one of the candidates. Zagan wonders who decides the 13th Archdemon, and Barbaros explains it's determined by the remaining 12 Archdemons. Gremory also notices Barbaros, known as the Purgatory, and Zagan, and she questions why Zagan, who is young and lacks a title, is among the Archdemon candidates. The auctioneer then presents their final item, explaining it was meant for Archdemon Marcosius, but was left behind after his passing. They reveal it's an elf from the distant northern Holy Land. Zagan is surprised to see the silver-haired elf, and the auctioneer emphasizes the elf's closeness to gods and natural spirits, making her magical properties highly valuable. Bidding starts at 10,000, and Zagan immediately bids 1 million for the elf, stunning everyone. Zagan is captivated by the elf's beauty and desires to help her, make her smile, and touch her. He feels like he's found something unexpected and approaches the stage. Feeling socially awkward, Zagan wonders what to say to the elf and questions why she's chained. The host explains the collar contains her mana, preventing her from escaping. Zagan expresses a desire to talk to her and hear her voice, unintentionally giving the auction attendees the wrong impression. The scene shifts to Zagan in his castle with the girl, feeling unsure about what to do next after bringing her home. He knows he'll have to talk to her eventually, and runs through different conversation scenarios in his head, but none seem right. The elf then asks if she can ask a question, and Zagan finds her voice sweet. He encourages her to ask, and she wonders how she'll be killed, hoping to prepare herself. Zagan reassures her he won't harm her, but noticing the equipment in his room, she fears something worse than death. Zagan explains the equipment belonged to the castle's previous owner, and he has no interest in torture. He struggles to ask for her name, but before he can, the girl introduces herself as Nephilia. Zagan finds her name beautiful and asks about her family name. Nephilia says she doesn't have one and suggests he call her Nephi. Zagan thinks her nickname is cute and asks if it's common for elves not to have family names. Nephilia explains that it's unusual, revealing she's a cursed child. She shows Zagan her undergarments, saying she's a virgin to reassure him, but he asks her to stop. Nephilia thought Zagan was worried she'd be used for experiments, but he assures he won't do that. She questions why he bought her, but Zagan evades, feeling embarrassed about his feelings for her. Despite his excitement about living together, he wants to maintain his dignity. Zagan offers her a room, asking her preferences. Nephilia jokingly wonders if he's asking where she wants to die, but Zagan reassures he won't harm her. He realizes Nephilia may have been sold as a slave and lied to about being a test subject or sacrifice. She doesn't want to discuss it and likely has no home. Zagan empathizes, sharing he didn't have a last name, grew up in the slums, and was called Yagan. He sees a connection between them. Zagan then explains to Nephilia that he bought her because he needed her, urging her not to speak of dying anymore. Nephilia is surprised by his words, but Zagan reassures her that from now on, she will live for his sake. She understands and follows him as he takes her to her room. Thinking she deserves a nice view, Zagan asks if she's afraid of heights. Nephilia replies that she isn't, so Zagan leads her to a room on the upper floors. While climbing the stairs, Nephilia stumbles, but Zagan catches her, reminding her to be careful. Feeling embarrassed, he continues holding her hand as they ascend. Upon reaching the topmost room, Zagan opens the door, only to quickly close it upon seeing a guillotine inside. Nephilia then suggests to Zagan that he can take her head if he wants to, but Zagan explains that the guillotine is just a trap to protect the castle from airborne enemies. He promises to get rid of it and uses his magic to remove everything from the room. Although the room is now uninhabitable, Zagan believes Nephilia shouldn't be scared anymore. However, Nephilia appears to be afraid of Zagan after witnessing his power. Zagan agrees that the room now feels gloomy, so Nephilia goes to the balcony. As she gazes at the moon, Zagan asks if she likes it. Nephilia replies that she doesn't know and wonders if it's okay for her to stay in this room. Zagan reassures her that it's fine as long as she doesn't mind the mess, and Nephilia says it's okay because this is the room her master prepared for her. Grateful, she thanks Zagan, surprising him as he hasn't been thanked in a long time. Nephilia adds that she hasn't thanked anyone in a long time either. Zagan sits wearily on his throne, visibly exhausted from a sleepless night. He couldn't rest because he allowed Nephilia to sleep nearby, concerned about the condition of her room. His thoughts were consumed by her, preventing him from finding any rest. Despite his desires, he refrained from making any advances, prioritizing Nephilia's comfort over his own urges. Suddenly, his stomach rumbles, signaling his hunger. He decides to fetch himself a morning snack. Shortly after he leaves, Nephilia awakens and tidies her blanket. Returning with a kettle in hand, Zagan notices her awake and greets her masterfully. This catches him off guard, unsure of how to respond to a simple good morning greeting. He debates internally whether to reciprocate or say something else, ultimately opting to inform her of the food he brought, albeit feeling disappointed in his inability to respond naturally. Nephilia and Zagan sit together in the hallway, enjoying their breakfast. Zagan eats absent-mindedly, pondering his recent struggle with communication. Nephilia, noticing they have the same meal, questions if it's usual. She expresses gratitude for being fed but finds it odd they're eating identical dishes. Zagan wonders if their meal of jerky and milk is too plain for breakfast. Nephilia explains that it's a meal typically served to slaves, which surprises Zagan. He realizes it's not a nutritious choice, noting Nephilia's concerned expression. He interprets her worry as fearing for his well-being. Although he acknowledges his breakfast isn't healthy, it's a habit from childhood he never questioned, bringing back nostalgic memories of its sour taste. Curious about human cuisine, Zagan's inquiry brings a smile to Nephilia's face. She offers to cook for him, admitting she's learned by imitation. Zagan is astonished by her culinary skills and regrets his past focus solely on sorcery. Excited by the prospect of Nephilia cooking for him, he suggests making a homemade meal together, to which Nephilia eagerly agrees. Deciding to shop for ingredients, Zagan flags down a passing coach in the forest. The driver quotes them a fare of 3 bronze coins for their destination. Zagan recalls that he's completely out of money after spending everything to win over his new bride. He decides to take a walk, realizing it's a cost-free activity. Nephilia is surprised by his sudden decision, but follows along, having no other option. As they stroll, Zagan realizes he's penniless and ponders how to replenish his funds. He considers selling some castle equipment but lacks the funds to pay for transportation. He briefly entertains the idea of robbing the coach driver, but dismisses it, not wanting to tarnish Nephilia's opinion of him. Another idea crosses his mind, selling the entire castle to start a restaurant with Nephilia, but his thoughts are interrupted by a commotion behind them. Turning around, Zagan sees the coach driver being accosted by bandits demanding his belongings. Recognizing them as mere thieves, not sorcerers, Zagan notices Nephilia trembling slightly. Concerned, he asks her what's wrong, but she insists she's fine. Suddenly, he realizes this situation mirrors how Nephilia was kidnapped before. With this in mind, he instructs Nephilia to observe him closely. Pointing his finger, he conjures a bolt of lightning, startling the bandits and averting the threat. Zagan grabs the attention of the bandits, who recognize him as a sorcerer and question his presence in the forest. Despite some uncertainty, they decide to attack him, banking on the belief that sorcerers need breaks between spells. Seizing the moment, they charge at Zagan, prompting him to shield Nephilia behind him to demonstrate her safety. The bandit leader swings his axe at Zagan, but to no avail. Zagan effortlessly stops the axe in its tracks, surprising the boss with his strength. Astonished that the bandit relies solely on force against a sorcerer, Zagan effortlessly dismantles the axe and sends the boss flying with a flick of his hand. As the bandits call for reinforcement from a sorcerer, one appears, astonished to see Zagan aiding others, a rarity among sorcerers. Zagan deduces that the bandits hired the sorcerer, who warns him of impending regret. The sorcerer conjures a fiery magic circle, but Zagan quickly dispels it, revealing its illusionary nature. The sorcerer attempts another spell, only to find Zagan has commandeered his magic circle. Zagan retaliates, using the circle to incinerate the sorcerer. Turning to the bandits, he encourages them to fight, but they flee in terror. Noticing Nephilia's disapproving expression, Zagan tries to reassure her of their safety, but she remains wary, citing the bandits' attack on the coach. Grateful passengers gather around Zagan, thanking him for saving them. The coach driver invites him to accompany them, offering payment for his protection. Zagan accepts the payment from the grateful passengers, surprised at how easily he acquired it. He briefly entertains the idea of making a fortune by defeating villains, but dismisses it upon realizing that sorcerers like him are often seen as villains themselves. Despite this, he appreciates the money, as he's previously fought against wrongdoers without receiving thanks. The passengers also praise Nephilia, associating her presence with Zagan's heroism. They hitch a ride on the coach, prompting Nephilia to ask Zagan why he helped the passengers. He explains that it was an unintentional way to reassure her about robbers. Wanting to impress Nephilia, he tries to sound cool by mentioning putting arrogant individuals in their place. But Nephilia's reaction leaves him questioning his choice of words. Unbeknownst to Zagan, Nephilia smiles at his attempt. Arriving at the street market, Zagan decides to buy necessities for Nephilia, pondering what she might need. Spotting a clothing shop, he takes Nephilia inside, where the store owner, Manuela, greets him with hesitation due to his sorcerer status. Zagan introduces Nephilia and instructs Manuela to assist her in finding suitable clothing. Manuela is impressed by Nephilia's beauty but notices the collar around her neck. Choosing to overlook it, she assures Zagan that she'll find something nice for Nephilia. Leading Nephilia away, Zagan feels uneasy about the collar's visibility but recalls the auctioneer's explanation for its necessity. Manuela returns with Nephilia wearing a revealing outfit and asks for Zagan's opinion. Embarrassed, Nephilia walks out, prompting Zagan to scold Manuela for the choice. However, Manuela defends herself, explaining that she was trying to cater to Zagan's preference. Feeling uncomfortable, Nephilia asks Zagan to stop looking at her. Zagan instructs Manuela to find Nephilia more suitable attire, and she complies, suggesting a traditional maid outfit. After Nephilia tries it on, Manuela highlights its quality, and the added comfort features of the boots. Zagan turns to Nephilia for her opinion, but she expresses her readiness to accept whatever is offered to her. Concerned that Manuela might choose another embarrassing outfit, Zagan advises Nephilia to quickly agree to the maid outfit. They leave the shop, and Manuela expresses gratitude for their patronage, noting Nephilia's fortunate situation with a caring master, which surprises Nephilia. Zagan then informs Nephilia that they will visit a blacksmith shop. Inside, the blacksmith inquires about Zagan's needs. Zagan requests the removal of Nephilia's collar, surprising her. He explains that she no longer needs it, as its presence reminds her of being the Archdemon's property. The blacksmith explains that he cannot remove the collar because it's enchanted beyond his expertise. Additionally, attempting to remove it improperly could endanger Nephilia's life due to the trap within the collar. He advises Zagan to use the collar's original key for safe removal. Zagan understands that the key to Nephilia's collar must be at the late Archdemon's castle since no one possessed it at the auction. He offers the blacksmith payment for the advice, but the blacksmith refuses, citing a past favor Zagan did for him. The blacksmith recalls how Zagan saved him and his daughter during a previous year when their coach was attacked, even though they fled in fear. Zagan takes back his coins, and the blacksmith insists Zagan visit if he ever needs help. As they leave the shop, Zagan feels unsettled by the sudden kindness of others towards him. He notices the positive impact Nephilia has on people just by being near him. Finishing their shopping, Zagan realizes the day is ending. Deciding not to burden Nephilia with cooking after a long day, he takes her out for dinner. During dinner, Nephilia asks if Zagan plans to remove her collar. Zagan confirms he intends to do so, but Nephilia questions if he's concerned she might run away when it's off. Zagan understands that Nephilia might want to run away once he removes her collar, but he explains to her that he can't do it yet, so she shouldn't expect it to happen soon. He criticizes himself for not being upfront about his intentions, even if she decides to leave. Observing Nephilia struggling with her food, Zagan wonders if she's unfamiliar with using a fork. She admits it's her first time eating in this manner. Zagan reflects on why Nephilia captured his attention initially. He sees in her someone who, like him before gaining power, is trying to navigate a world where they feel out of place. Encouraging her to eat freely, Zagan assures her that the meal will be more enjoyable than the plain breakfast jerky. Nephilia attempts to pick up a berry with her fork but struggles. Switching to a spoon, she successfully eats it and finds it delicious. Zagan tries to use his fork but fails, prompting Nephilia to offer him a berry with her spoon. Despite internal moral considerations, Zagan decides to set them aside and eats from her spoon. He compliments the taste of the berry, but both feel too embarrassed to make eye contact. Nephilia notices that Zagan doesn't give her explicit instructions, so she asks if she can assist him in any way she sees fit. Zagan agrees, and he offers her a berry from his plate using his fork. They both feel embarrassed when other diners chuckle at their interaction. As they exit the restaurant, Zagan feels content with their master-servant dynamic. Meanwhile, Chastel, the woman Zagan rescued, is revealed to be a knight. Lost in thought, she ponders why a sorcerer would come to her aid. Suddenly, Lord Clavewell enters the room and praises Chastel for thwarting the kidnappers along the roads. He informs her that there's more to be done because they've discovered that the culprit behind the kidnappings is Zagan. Shocked, Chastel denies this accusation. But Lord Clavewell insists that even if mistaken, Zagan must be apprehended solely for being a sorcerer. He emphasizes that sorcerers are inherently wicked and must be brought to justice. As Nephilia pours Zagan some tea, his eyes catch her ears wiggling slightly, and he wonders if it's a sign of her happiness with his compliments. Settling down for breakfast, Zagan asks if Nephilia has eaten yet. She admits she hasn't, prompting Zagan to suggest they eat together. Surprised, Nephilia explains she only prepared enough for him, leaving Zagan wondering if she intended to skip breakfast. Realizing she forgot to prepare for herself, Nephilia hesitates, but Zagan insists on sharing his meal. He invites her to sit at the table, but she protests, having only set up one seat. Zagan suggests she sits on his lap, assuring her it's acceptable. Despite feeling embarrassed, Nephilia complies with his request. Zagan is taken aback by her obedience, but proceeds to feed her. Nephilia finds sitting on his lap uncomfortable but doesn't resist. Zagan encourages her to remember to prepare a seat for herself next time, to which she agrees. However, he reassures her that he doesn't mind if she sits on his lap again. Accepting his words, Nephilia serves him some soup, prompting Zagan to suspect she's teasing him. Nonetheless, he tastes the soup, finding it warm and delicious, a sentiment echoed by Nephilia. A few days later, Zagan is perched on a ladder, engrossed in reading books in the library. Nephilia enters, curious about what he's always studying. Surprised by her question, Zagan realizes she doesn't recognize that he's studying sorcery. She explains that she wasn't sure about the purpose of the intricate drawings in the books. Zagan ponders if elven sorcery differs from what he studied, but Nephilia confesses she can't wield sorcery. This surprises Zagan, considering Nephilia's high mana quality. Drawing a symbol, Zagan explains that similar symbols hold specific powers, though their meanings are debated. Some believe they represent the language of gods, while others see them as marks of pacts with demons. Uncertain of the truth, Zagan sketches a blueprint for a basic sorcery formation called a sorceress circle. He demonstrates by channeling mana into it, creating small bolts of lightning. This, he explains, is the simplest sorcery form, with potency enhanced by adding symbols to the circle. Zagan further elaborates that aspects like direction, range, and timing can be controlled, showcasing a larger lightning bolt erupting from the circle. Startled, Nephilia receives Zagan's apology for surprising her. He explains that anyone can utilize a sorcerer's circle by channeling mana into it. Zagan adds that while sorcerers can hijack another's circle, there are restrictions in place. He mentions that the structure of the magic circle is referred to as a circuit. Observing Nephilia's thoughtful expression, Zagan inquires about her thoughts. She points out that he's only added symbols outside the circle, and wonders if it's possible to include something within it. Impressed by her insight, Zagan explains that it's both impossible and possible. He elucidates that creating another circle inside a complete one could either prevent activation or disrupt it. However, with precise mana flow control, it could be achievable. Nephilia queries if it's feasible to override someone else's sorcery, to which Zagan affirms, stating it could defend against various sorceress attacks. He notes the theoretical potential for the most powerful sorcery, but acknowledges the complexity involved. Despite the possibility, he remarks that serious sorcery studies are rare, although some dabble with the idea. Nephilia expresses her grasp of sorceress theory and ponders if anyone can use it once they understand it. Zagan acknowledges her potential knack for sorcery, emphasizing the direct link between knowledge and power for sorcerers. He cautions her about traps set around sorcery books to deter theft and assures her he has adjusted them to avoid triggering them. Initially frightened, Nephilia realizes Zagan is teasing her, which makes her happy. Surprised by their lengthy conversation, she questions Zagan's intentions with his extraordinary power. Observing her curiosity, Zagan admits he's never contemplated such matters before. He candidly shares his past struggles, recounting his survival instincts and eventual pursuit of strength after being captured by a sorcerer. Zagan recounts his resolve to avoid being sacrificed and his aspiration for immortality. However, Nephilia expresses doubt in her ability to attain such strength. As Zagan prepares to reassure her, he senses that one of his traps has been triggered. Chassel arrives at his castle accompanied by a group of soldiers. Zagan informs Nephilia of their guests and instructs her to prepare dinner for just the two of them since the visitors will soon depart. He heads out to greet them while Nephilia tends to the meal. Meanwhile, the soldiers find themselves trapped in a circular movement pattern, realizing they are ensnared within a sorcerer's barrier. Chassel, recognizing the situation, attempts to break the barrier with her sword. However, Zagan swiftly intervenes, appearing at the gate and fatally striking her down. Though Chassel recognizes Zagan, he fails to remember her. Initially perplexed by her possession of a sacred sword, one of the legendary weapons known for vanquishing evil. Recalling his previous encounter with her, Zagan regrets his actions but proceeds with his plans, indicating he has other matters to attend to. With a surge of lightning, he incapacitates Chassel and her companions. As one of the knights deflects his blow, Zagan is taken aback to see his shield scratch, despite his efforts to hold back. The knights urge Chassel to leave Zagan to them, but when one charges at Zagan, he swiftly incapacitates him with a powerful punch. Zagan contemplates whether they will retreat now or if they expect Chassel to carry all three of them back home. Ignoring Chastel's command to withdraw, another knight launches an attack at Zagan. Zagan effortlessly disarms him, knocking him to the ground with a flick. Stepping on his fallen opponent's face, Zagan warns Chassel not to provoke him further, or her knight will pay the price. Chassel, reluctantly dropping her sword, questions Zagan's intent to humiliate them despite his victory. Zagan explains his motive is to instill fear, hoping they will spread word of their defeat rather than becoming mere casualties. However, Chassel sees through his facade, surprising Zagan as he refrained from taking their lives to avoid distressing Nephilia. Seizing the opportunity, Chassel strikes at him, slicing through his magical barrier with her powerful sword. Realizing the strength of her weapon, Zagan evades her attacks, pondering why such a petite figure wields such a formidable sword. Despite Chastel's persistence, Zagan refrains from retaliating, admitting his reluctance to harm women. Chassel challenges Zagan's allegiance to sorcery, condemning its very existence for causing widespread suffering. Zagan points out Chastel's own role in using her abilities to eliminate sorcerers who could have helped others, implying she shares responsibility. This fuels Chastel's determination not to be defeated by Zagan. She attempts to strike him with her sword, but Zagan intercepts the blade. They then engage in a contest of strength, during which Chastel demonstrates her superior power, leaving Zagan to realize she had been holding back. Recognizing his disadvantage, Zagan opts to end the confrontation. However, Chastel surprises him by suggesting he feign defeat to avoid drawing the attention of a stronger magic knight. She urges him to abandon his life as a sorcerer and live peacefully. Zagan is incredulous but moved by her unexpected offer, recalling her recognition of his mercy during their encounter and his past act of saving her life. Aware of the risks she faces in making such a proposition, as aiding a sorcerer is a grave offense for knights, Zagan grapples with his decision. Ultimately, he concludes that fleeing is not an option, as it would jeopardize Nephilia's safety. As Nephilia emerges from the castle, one of the knights defies Chastel's orders and attacks her with a spear. In a desperate bid to protect Nephilia, Zagan rushes to her aid, resulting in the spear piercing his hand. Enraged by the attack on Zagan, Nephilia taps into her power, manipulating the forest's surroundings. Despite Zagan's plea to refrain from harming the knights, Nephilia's actions render them helpless, much to Zagan's concern for their well-being. Zagan is astonished by Nephilia's extraordinary power. Following Chastel's apology for involving an innocent bystander in their conflict, the knights retreat to the castle. Seizing the opportunity, Zagan inquires about Nephilia's abilities. She clarifies that what she demonstrated wasn't sorcery, prompting Zagan to delve deeper out of his admiration for her. Curious, he asks if she felt afraid during the display of her power. Nephilia is taken aback by Zagan's lack of unease and explains that her abilities stem from mysticism. Zagan is taken by surprise, as mysticism allows one to access powers beyond natural law merely by wishing it. He ponders whether all elves possess such capability, but Nephilia discloses that her use of mysticism is due to a curse. She reveals that such powers shouldn't exist because individuals with white hair, like herself, are not supposed to be born. Zagan discerns her emotional distress and listens as she recounts a traumatic experience from her past. Nephilia recalls an attack on her elven village, during which she was urged to defend it in exchange for being spared. Overwhelmed by the responsibility, she surrendered herself while others attempted to flee. Witnessing the capture of those who fled, she experienced a twisted sense of satisfaction, questioning her sanity for deriving joy from their demise. Zagan realizes the source of her reserved demeanor and offers reassurance. Contrary to her fears, he doesn't view her as a horrible person and accepts her for who she is. Zagan expresses to Nephilia that if he had been in her situation, he would have retaliated against the attackers and possibly the entire village. Nephilia confesses her fear of not being forgiven by the villagers, but Zagan advises her not to concern herself with those who have passed away. He encourages her to embrace her ability and live a fulfilling life, emphasizing that neglecting her strength would be a disservice to those less fortunate. Recalling an encounter with a girl he once rescued from bandits, Zagan reflects on her privileged upbringing, which he believes made her weak. Determined not to follow the same path, he resolved to strive for strength. Assuring Nephilia of her importance to him, Zagan reminds her of his need for her presence. Moved by his words, Nephilia questions if she truly has the right to peacefully coexist with him. Zagan reassures her, expressing his inability to imagine life without her. Touched, Nephilia becomes emotional, prompting Zagan to offer his support and comfort. Afterwards, she apologizes to him for her undignified display, and Zagan tells her not to worry about it. Nephilia then asks him if his hands are okay, and Zagan notices that they are no longer hurting. He removes the bandages and discovers that his wounds are gone. He wonders if Nephilia is behind this, and she confirms it. Zagan can't believe that his hands healed just by touching her, realizing it must be the power of mysticism. He expresses his gratitude, and Nephilia mentions it's the first time he's thanked her. Zagan is surprised he hadn't thanked Nephilia before and apologizes for it. She reassures him it's fine, as he is supposed to be her master. The scene shifts to Zagan trying to sleep at night, and Nephilia comes to him, asking if he'd like to sleep with her. He wonders if she means what he thinks, and Nephilia explains the castle only has one bed, and he always sleeps in that chair. She thought he'd rest better if he laid down. Zagan realizes she just wants them to sleep together and nothing more. He appreciates her concern but explains the importance of him being in the room as it's the anchor point of his barriers, crucial in case anything happens. Nephilia explains that she thought Zagan might need some rest, so she offers her lap as a pillow. Zagan finds it tempting and ultimately succumbs, resting on Nephilia's lap. He considers it amazing and asks her why she's doing this. Nephilia mentions that Jagan previously told her she could stay, even after he learned about her mysticism, so she wanted to express her gratitude. Jagan reassures her she doesn't need to thank him, as she's already doing a great job. He then asks if she's interested in learning sorcery. Nephilia wonders if she'd be capable, and Jagan notes that he observed her lack of control over her mysticism today. He's unsure if learning sorcery will help her control her powers better, but believes it could at least aid in self-defense. Nephilia is uncertain about her ability to use sorcery, but Jagan assures her she'll likely excel at it. She wonders if this would make her more useful to Jagan, who insists she's already a great help. Nephilia then asks if she could protect him with sorcery, and Jagan reminds her that she already shielded him from the angelic knights. Nephilia declares her intent to learn sorcery to assist Jagan, who reflects that he would have preferred if she did it for herself but accepts her decision. He then appoints Nephilia as his apprentice, realizing he never considered having one before. Nephilia recalls Jagan's earlier words about using power if they have it, realizing it may have been difficult for him despite his stoic demeanor. She hugs Jagan, expressing that he's not a bad person and acknowledging his kindness despite his reserved nature, which moves Jagan to tears. He hopes for more moments like this. The scene shifts to Barbados visiting Jagan, surprised he's unharmed after the attack by the angelic knights. Jagan dismisses them as weak, but Barbados mentions rumors of one wielding a sacred sword. Jagan confirms this, acknowledging the strength of the maiden with the sacred sword, who managed to damage some of his barriers around the castle. Nephilia then serves Barbados some tea, and he's surprised to see that the elf Jagan bought is still alive. He wonders why Jagan hasn't sacrificed her and asks if he's keeping her alive as long as she satisfies him. Jagan clarifies that this isn't the case and introduces Nephilia as his apprentice. Barbados is taken aback that Jagan has taken an apprentice, but Jagan explains that there are sorceries he can't manage alone, and Nephilia will be helpful with that. Barbados thinks having an elf on his side makes Jagan unbeatable in sorcery, and approves of the idea. Jagan dislikes Barbados' objectification of Nephilia, and Barbados questions if she helped Jagan chase off the angelic knights. Jagan confirms she aided him, and Barbados assumes she caused the chaos outside. He then inquires if Jagan is vying for one of the Archdemon's seats, suspecting it's for the authority it brings, which would deter threats against Nephilia. Jagan admits he's after the seat but doubts he'll be chosen soon since he's only been studying sorcery for a decade, unlike others with centuries of experience. He acknowledges his lack of knowledge compared to them, but believes as long as he survives, he'll eventually have the opportunity to claim a vacant seat. Jagan then praises the tea and snacks that Nephilia made, and Barbados questions if he's grown fond of her. Jagan explains it's natural to value one's apprentice, and finds it convenient to refer to Nephilia as such. Barbados remarks that Jagan still retains some humanity, and takes his leave. Later, Jagan wonders why Barbados visited, and Nephilia asks if they're friends. Jagan clarifies they're not, but Nephilia notes Barbados seemed to enjoy their conversation. Jagan doubts Barbados' enjoyment and thinks Nephilia might be mistaken. He then repairs the barriers damaged by the angelic knights, teaching Nephilia the basics of sorcery. Jagan works hard on Nephilia's sorcery lessons, and she assists in castle duties while learning. He finds solace in not being alone and notices Nephilia gradually expressing herself more, though her mysticism remains unruly. A month later, a strange bird breaks the castle's barrier, delivering an invitation from the 12 Archdemons. Surprised by their summons, Jagan attends the gathering at the lair of Archdemon Marcojas beneath the Canoid's trading hub. He wonders what they seek from him as he meets the 12, who notice his youthfulness, making him the youngest chosen one. Jagan feels the weight of their presence, almost nauseating, yet he restrains himself. He dares to question if they've summoned him merely for observation, contemplating leaving. The Archdemons rebuke his audacity, declaring him their 13th comrade, an Archdemon. They reveal the Archdemon brand left by Marcoja, explaining it as the emblem of their authority. Sensing dense mana from the emblem, Jagan also perceives similar energy from the other Archdemons. He grasps that being an Archdemon transcends mere title. Their overwhelming power explains why ordinary sorcerers falter against them. Jagan remains silent, prompting the Archdemons to inquire if anything displeases him. Expressing disbelief in his selection, Jagan questions why he was chosen when stronger sorcerers exist. The Archdemons dismiss his concerns, affirming his significance despite his perceived insignificance. Recalling his victory over Andres the Accursed as a child, Jagan reflects on how he acquired knowledge despite his tender age. They clarify that Jagan grasped his sorcery and its intricacies effortlessly, enabling him to develop entirely unique spells. The archdemons assert that none can hinder him if he chooses to absorb power from others or to slay, as none would withstand his might. Should he desire, others would have no recourse but to yield their sorcery to him, a despotic authority befitting an archdemon. They predict he will ascend to become history's greatest sorcerer, hence their immediate elevation of him to an archdemon. Yagan suggests he could absorb their power too, but the archdemons scoff at the notion. One among them claims he could, but they could extract far more from him than he could ever from them. This brings Yagan's mind to Nephilia, and the archdemons clarify that their fury is not merely about destruction, it's about obliterating all that he holds dear. They emphasize that this is the essence of their kind and what he will inevitably become. He understands this, reflecting that since he was compelled into sorcery, a normal life was never an option. He explains that a sorcerer's ultimate fate is either obscurity or transformation into entities like them. He refuses to drag Nephilia into this darkness, setting a condition for accepting their offer. After revealing his condition and receiving their agreement, Yagan embraces the emblem and earns his second name from the archdemons. The scene shifts to Yagan's return to Nephilia, who has prepared lamb stew. Sensing his solemn demeanor, she inquires if something has occurred. Yagan realizes there's no turning back. However, Nephilia can still lead a regular life. He shares that he has become an archdemon, and despite the weight of his decision, Nephilia congratulates him. Jargon reveals that he has acquired all of Marcosius' possessions as part of his newfound status, and then he removes Nephilia's collar. He informs her that he no longer requires her services now that he's become an archdemon. The scene transitions to Nephilia awakening in a town, bewildered about her whereabouts. Recollecting that she was preparing lamb stew for Jargon, she contemplates returning to the castle. However, upon noticing her broken collar, she recalls that her master has cast her aside. Reflecting on the time spent with him, she's surprised by her lack of tears despite the recent event. After Nephilia sits in the middle of the street, feeling lost and unsure of where to go, Chastel notices her and approaches, concerned about the sad and lonely girl. However, Nephilia, mistaking Chastel's intentions, believes she's there to eliminate her for being with Sin, the wizard's apprentice. Despite Chastel's attempts to clarify the misunderstanding, their conversation draws the attention of onlookers, who recognize Nephilia as well as Chastel and assume the worst about the situation. Manuela, particularly, steps in to protect Nephilia, positioning herself between them. The crowd begins to view Chastel as a threat, casting judgments and making her feel guilty, even though Nephilia clarifies that Chastel hadn't done anything to her. After the confusion settles, Manuela, Nephilia, and Chastel decide to continue their discussion in a nearby restaurant. There, Manuela questions if Chastel would attack Nephilia if she were on a mission. Before Chastel can respond, Nephilia explains that despite meeting under similar circumstances, Chastel didn't attack her. Furthermore, Nephilia mentions that Chastel didn't attack her master either, which prompts the knight to recall Torres, the man whom Nephilia witnessed hurting Zagan, causing a disturbance among the plants with her attack. Then, Nephilia receives a meal and worries about payment, but Manuela assures her it's on her. However, Manuela makes it clear that the same courtesy doesn't extend to Chastel, indicating her lingering distrust toward the knight. Nephilia recognizes the lamb stew, the same dish she used to prepare for her master, which triggers an emotional response, leading her to tears. Manuela and Nephilia immediately try to comfort her. After finishing her meal, Nephilia explains to the two that her master expelled her without a clear explanation, though she still sees him as a decent person. However, this situation has left her feeling like she was being used by him. Nephilia asserts that this isn't the case, and Manuela asks if there were any incidents before Zagan expelled her. Nephilia recalls that her master became an archdemon, and she asks the girls what that means. Manuela explains that archdemons are powerful wizards, and the city used to be secure under the rule of Marcosius, the previous archdemon. However, since his death, there have been numerous kidnappings of girls. The church has apprehended those responsible, including a wizard known as the Face Thief. This reminds Chastel that the church accused Zagan of being the mastermind behind the kidnapping, while Nephilia realizes that despite the church's efforts to maintain security, the residents harbor animosity toward them. Manuela clarifies that the animosity toward the church stems from the high amount they demand from everyone as a salvation offering. Chastel feels remorseful once again for being an angelic knight, but Nephilia realizes that Chastel wasn't the one demanding the payment, so it's unfair to blame her. Chastel is impressed by Nephilia and understands why Zagan was fond of her. Then, she returns to the topic and explains that archdemons are seen as symbols of evil, and angelic knights have sworn to eradicate them, even at the cost of their own lives. However, she reveals that there are only 12 sacred swords but 13 archdemons, meaning the wizards outnumber the knights. So if a new archdemon were chosen, the church would likely attempt to eliminate their group before they could gather strength. and other wizards might also attack them to advance their own positions. Nephilia realizes that the emergence of a new archdemon would lead to many conflicts, and wonders if that's why Zagan sent her away. Then, Chastel interrupts her thoughts to ask if Nephilia believes her master capable of organizing wizards to kidnap people for sacrifice. Nephilia responds sincerely that she doesn't think he would do such a thing because Zagan isn't interested in people he deems weak, citing an example of the day he saved a carriage from bandits. But this realization dawns on Nephilia for the first time that her master helped the people in the carriage so she could rest. Tresdal observes that Nephilia is probably right about Zagan not being involved in the kidnapping. After all, during their fight, the wizard held back because she was a woman showing kindness, though it was humiliating for a knight. Chastel also recalls the day she met him, noticing that Zagan seemed to need company, even though she denies it and pushes people away from him. Nephilia understands what Chastel means and is surprised that someone else noticed it. She recalls the day she arrived at the castle and saw the moon through the window, something she thought she would never see again, and Zagan joined her. The memory prompts Nephilia to realize that her master still needs company, so she stands up from the table, determined to return to Zagan. The girls are concerned about her decision, but Nephilia explains that despite the wizard being very strong and no one able to face him, it doesn't mean he can't be hurt or should be alone. Chastel understands Nephilia's determination and reveals that she also wants to fulfill her goal as a knight, to clear Zagan's name because some wizard impersonated him to accuse him of crimes he didn't commit. With everything settled, the three girls begin to say goodbye, and Manuela tells Nephilia to seek her out if she encounters any problems again because they are friends. The elf is taken aback by this revelation and explains that she has never had any friends before, which brings great joy to Manuela upon realizing that she's the first one. Chastel then asks if she can also be considered a friend of theirs, and Manuela responds that she wouldn't tease her if she didn't already consider her one. Suddenly, some knights arrive looking for Chastel, including Taurus, who becomes fearful when he recognizes Nephilia. She tries to defuse the situation when suddenly a powerful wizard's magic envelops the area. Chastel quickly pushes Manuela to safety, and she manages to escape through a window. The wizard, who introduces himself as Zagan, disregards Manuela's escape and declares Chastel as his prisoner. He states that if the Megs want her back, they'll have to come to his castle. Later, Zagan contemplates the silence of living alone as he gazes at the moon. He reflects on the failed ambush attempts by the three knights, who fell into traps set up by him with Nephilia's help. While he misses his apprentice, he believes he made the right decision in sending her away, as their brief time together could have put her in danger. Additionally, he acknowledges that the people of Kinuids hold a favorable opinion of Nephilia, ensuring her peaceful and pleasant life in the city. As Zagan prepares to depart, one of the knights grabs his foot and pleads for Chastel's release. The man discloses that the girl defended his innocence vigorously, and was even prepared to challenge the church to uncover the true culprit behind the kidnappings, hoping it would persuade the sorcerer to show mercy and release her. However, the man is bewildered because he was unaware of what had occurred. Suddenly, Manuela arrives and informs him that Chastel and Ophelia have been abducted by a sorcerer. Zagan is stunned and wonders if he waited too long to distance himself from the elf. However, instead of taking action, he hesitates to rescue her because it would reveal their connection, especially to everyone present. Sensing the man's uncertainty, Manuela reveals that Nephilia desired to return to him and questions whether sorcerers genuinely care about those who care for them. While the girl questions Zagan's character, the sorcerer realizes that the emotional pain he feels is greater than any physical attack he has endured because Nephilia expressed her desire to return to him despite his harsh words. Therefore, Zagan expresses gratitude to Manuela and agrees that all sorcerers, without exception, are selfish and only view people as tools. However, Nephilia belongs to him, and for that reason, he will make any sorcerer who dares to harm her pay. Therefore, Zagan opens a portal, swearing to protect Nephilia and asking if Manuela will accompany him in rescuing the elf. The girl agrees, and the knights also request to join in saving Chastel. Manuela explains that they only need to know the whereabouts of the captives because they were taken by mysterious shadows, but Zagan reassures them that this is not an issue because he knows the sorcerer responsible. Meanwhile, Nephilia awakens to find herself and Chastel bound by mana-sealing handcuffs, preventing her from using any spells. Although less intricate than the collar, the elf realizes she lacks the strength to break free. Furthermore, there is no nearby natural environment for her to harness her mystic abilities. At that moment, Barbados, the sorcerer behind the abduction, appears. Nephilia is dismayed because she believed he was a friend of her master, but Barbados scoffs at the idea, stating that sorcerers don't have friends. When asked about his motives, Barbados reveals that the first sorcerer Zagan eliminated was Andras, the Cursed, his mentor. However, the man clarifies that he's not seeking revenge for his mentor because he would have taken action himself if Zagan hadn't. But if that were the case, the castle, knowledge, and wealth acquired by Zagan would rightfully belong to him. For this reason, Barbatos orchestrated a scheme to turn the church against the sorcerer. But the plan was poorly executed as his associates left behind many clues, and those he dispatched to confront Zagan ended up being defeated. Nephilia is infuriated by Barbatos' manipulation of events to frame Zagan, and he reveals that it was the face thief who conceived the idea of the abductions. Furthermore, he explains that the abducted girls are intended for a ritual to prove his worthiness to join the Archdemons and to eliminate Zagan, who is also vying for the position. Barbatos expresses regret that the sacrifices did not yield the desired results, but he believes that having an elf with white hair, like Nephilia, will suffice for his plan. However, Nephilia disagrees with his assessment. Barbatos questions whether she still hopes for Zagan to rescue her. In response, the elf states that she wouldn't want her master to intervene in this matter and clarifies that Barbatos' plan is doomed to fail because Zagan has already ascended to the rank of Archdemon, which is why he terminated their partnership. Barbatos is astonished by the revelation and grows even more furious with Zagan, who not only seized Andros's fortune but also claimed the position of the 13th Archdemon. Nevertheless, the sorcerer refuses to relent and resolves to forcefully usurp Zagan's title. He escorts Nephilia to a magical circle to enact her sacrifice, prompting Chesidel to become frantic in her attempts to save her friend by offering herself in Nephilia's stead. Barbatos instructs the knight to wait her turn, explaining that Nephilia is to be sacrificed first due to the ritual's requirements for high-quality ingredients. This triggers a recollection in Nephilia, who has spent her life being treated as a mere tool, except by Zagan, who never viewed her as such. Determined to survive and reunite with her master, Nephilia resolves to return to him and fulfill his wishes, even if Zagan initially rejects her, as she refuses to let him live in solitude. Growing impatient with Nephilia's defiance, Barbatos disparages her as nothing more than a slave and prepares to attack her into submission. However, at that critical moment, Zagan materializes, proud of his apprentice's resolute declaration. Barbatos questions Jagan about how long he suspected his plan, and Jagan reveals that his doubts arose with the arrival of the face-stealing sorcerer. He explains that someone who pleaded for mercy wouldn't have breached his barrier, and Barbatos, known for bypassing security, immediately came to mind. Jagan then elaborates on Barbatos' title, the Purgatory, which signifies the realm between heaven and the underworld. He describes how Barbatos can create pocket dimensions using this concept, specializing in transportation and summoning, even surpassing Jagan himself. Noting Barbatos' appearance after the Angelic Night and the Face Stealer, Jagan found it suspicious, especially when Barbatos visited as if to check the outcome. Barbatos is astonished that Jagan still served him tea despite his suspicions, to which Jagan admits his curiosity about Barbatos' intention. Then, observing Nephi, Jagan vows to make Barbatos pay for hurting her. He incapacitates Barbatos, freeing Nephi from her chains, and checks on her well-being. Nephi reassures Jagan, expressing concern for him, indicating that despite her willingness to accept his decision, she senses his distress. Jagan asks Nephi if he appears injured to her, and she confirms that he does. Advising him not to isolate himself, Nephi tells Jagan not to apologize for leaving her alone. When Barbatos attempts to use his magic against Jagan, he finds himself unable to activate it despite repeated attempts. Puzzled by this, Barbatos wonders why his magic isn't working, realizing that while he can form magic circle, he can't activate the spells. Curious about the situation, Nephi inquires about what's happening. Jagan recalls his previous explanation to her about the ultimate sorcery, where they can overwrite someone's sorcery by adding matching magic circles from within. He reveals a trick to accomplish this, explaining that by casting the exact same circle, the sorceries will undergo a harmonic cancellation. Barbatos expresses disbelief at Andros's legacy, but Jagan clarifies that this isn't the case, asserting that Andros wouldn't have died if he possessed such power. Jagan recounts his own experience with sorcery, starting when he was just 8 years old and was captured by Andros the Accursed, who created a casting circle. Jagan memorized its form and later replicated it on his palm using his own blood. Though he initially considered it foolish, Jagan found himself activating the same magic circle as Andros during an escape attempt, leading to Andros's demise. Barbatos is incredulous at the circumstances of his master's death. Attempting to overwhelm Jagan with multiple magic circles, Barbatos finds each of his attempts cancelled out by Jagan. Astonished by Jagan's ability to instantly overwrite unfamiliar magic circles, Barbatos acknowledges Jagan's skill. Jagan explains that even an amateur can achieve such feats with precise timing. Jagan advises Barbados that he has much room for improvement in his sorcery if he wishes to be considered a true sorcerer. He recounts his own journey of sorcery research, mentioning how he isolated himself in the castle after becoming a sorcerer, avoiding contact with even his former street urchin friends. Despite Jagan's apparent annoyance, Barbados persistently sought him out, demonstrating unwavering loyalty. Barbados admits that he could have harmed Jagan at any time but chose not to out of curiosity about Jagan's intention. Jagan then demonstrates his latest work by transforming the magic circles Barbados used into a new form of sorcery focused on physical enhancement. Although it currently serves only as physical enhancement, Jagan expresses his intention to refine it further. Barbados observes Jagan's feat and remarks that Jagan has absorbed his sorcery. Jagan agrees with Barbados's assessment, noting that he now possesses his own title bestowed upon him by the Archdemons, Sorcerer Slayer. Jagan then employs his magic against Barbados, incapacitating him. Barbados realizes that Jagan has neutralized all his defensive sorcery, leaving him defenseless against Jagan's physical enhancements. He acknowledges that even if he were an archdemon, he wouldn't have been able to withstand a punch from Jagan. Barbados concedes defeat, pledging to never confront Jagan again and offering to share all his knowledge if Jagan spares him, appealing to their supposed friendship. However, Jagan dismisses the notion of friendship among sorcerers, preparing to attack Barbados. In a playful gesture, Jagan feigns an attack, assuring Barbados that he was only joking. He jokingly mentions that while he could kill Barbados, he wouldn't get the opportunity to enjoy Barbados's taste in liquor, as he lacks discerning taste. Surprised by Jagan's apparent mercy, Barbados questions if this is an act of kindness. Jagan clarifies that he's simply confident that Barbados poses no threat to him. Barbados responds defiantly, vowing to seek revenge, but Jagan brushes off the threat, suggesting that Barbados treat him to drinks every time Jagan emerges victorious. Barbados is astonished by Jagan's unconventional behavior, as conventional sorcery dictates that enemies should be eliminated. However, Jagan, now an archdemon, asserts that he no longer feels bound by such conventions. He declares his intention to assert his will freely, expressing a desire for Nephi to live openly in the world, even if it means seizing control of it. Despite this, he decides not to kill Barbados, challenging him to become strong enough to change his mind if he disagrees. Meanwhile, Manuela releases Castile, causing a magic circle created by Barbados to react unexpectedly. Initially, Jagan assumes Barbados is responsible, but Barbados denies it. They discover that Jagan's earlier punch to the ground activated the circle, leading to the emergence of a demon from the swelling mana. Jagan explains that demons were believed to exist in ancient times, with theories suggesting their influence on mortal practices. He marvels at Barbados's ability to summon a demon, noting its shadowy appearance. Despite the imperfect summoning due to the lack of sacrifice and haphazard activation, the demon appears formidable, surpassing mortal capabilities. Recognizing the insignificance of mortals compared to demons and gods, Jagan contemplates the potential consequences. However, to his surprise, the demon bows to him, addressing him as a king and offering its obedience. This unexpected display leaves everyone astonished, prompting Jagan to reflect on the power of the Archdemon emblem and his newfound inheritance. Jagan instructs the demon to depart, and it complies. As the cave collapses, Jagan ensures everyone's safety and evacuates them. The Cerulean Knights arrive to retrieve Chasteel, relieved to find her unharmed. Despite their assistance, they assert that their duty to hunt sorcerers remains unchanged, prompting Jagan to dismiss them. After bidding farewell to the knights, Manuela departs, advising Jagan to resolve matters with Nephi. Jagan then inquires if Barbados wishes to continue their conflict, to which Barbados declines. Barbados humorously suggests that Jagan might pardon him if treated to high-quality alcohol, to which Jagan agrees, albeit jokingly. With Barbados gone, Jagan and Nephi are left alone. Uncertain of what to say, Jagan seeks Nephi's wishes, and she expresses her desire to remain by his side. Jagan, overwhelmed, agrees, but acknowledges that things must change. He kneels before her, expressing his feelings and insisting that she address him by his name from now on. Though he struggles to articulate his love, Jagan asserts his possessiveness over Nephi, declaring that she belongs to him even beyond death. Jagan ponders why he struggles to express his love for Nephi, while Nephi assures him of her commitment to him forever. She requests that he reattach her collar, although Jagan hesitates, aware that it symbolizes enslavement. Nephi explains that she doesn't mind the collar, as it signifies their initial connection. Reluctantly, Jagan places the collar around Nephi's neck. Later, Nephi questions Jagan about the nature of their relationship now that she is neither his slave, servant, nor apprentice. Jagan admits he doesn't have a clear answer, wishing for guidance. The scene shifts to the town of Kenoids, where residents discuss the new Archdemon. They regard him as a decent person, recalling an incident where he saved someone from brigands. Chimris and Gremory are also present, with Chimris asking Gremory if she's bothered by not acquiring the Archdemon's seat. Gremory dismisses any concern, expressing her intention to instigate change. Locals speculate whether the new Archdemon will become the Lord of Kenoids, noting his appearances in town, often accompanied by a beautiful elf. Afterward, in the church, Chastel and her Cerulean Knights refuse to pursue Jolin, the 13th Archdemon. Chastel feels indebted to him as he saved her life twice. She informs Cardinal Clavel that John wasn't involved in the recent kidnappings and is innocent. Clavel is shocked that she is defending a sorcerer, viewing it as a serious sin. As a consequence, Clavel removes Chastel from her position as an angelic knight. Chastel realizes that the church prioritizes its own interests over hunting the Archdemons. She feels disappointed in the church's actions and considers it a new low. Despite her Cerulean Knights attempting to defend her, Chastel silences them. She admires John for staying true to his beliefs and wishes to do the same. Chasteel returns her sacred sword to the Cardinal and resigns from her position as an angelic knight. Reflecting on her journey, she recalls that initially, wielding the sacred sword filled her with pride as she protected people. However, over time, she felt increasingly bound to the church's directives, losing sight of her original purpose. Despite feeling disheartened, Clavel reassures her that her punishment will eventually be lifted. He explains that sacred swords choose their wielders, making her punishment unusual. Clavel promises to find a resolution and urges Chasteel to remain patient. Concerned about her safety, Clavel warns Chasteel of the impending arrival of Raphael Hirondel, a formidable sacred sword wielder. Chasteel worries that Raphael may come to condemn her as an apostate. Reflecting on her motivations, she realizes she became a holy knight to aid others. Meanwhile, Yagan conducts research in his library, seeking answers about why a demon showed deference to him. Despite weeks of investigation, he remains unable to uncover the truth, even with resources acquired from Markoja's castle. Nephi sneaks into the library, catching Yagan's attention, but he decides to play along and feign ignorance to see what she's planning. Nephi's attempt to surprise him fails, and she confesses her intention to cheer him up, noticing his exhaustion. Yagan finds Nephi's gesture endearing and asks if she needs something. She informs him that lunch is ready, describing the menu she prepared: salad with Caesar dressing, sauteed lamb, and soup. Curious about Caesar dressing, Yagan inquired, and Nephi explains its origin, attributing it to a sorcerer named Caesar known for his focus on flavor rather than immortality. Impressed by Manuela's knowledge, Yagan tries the food, finding it delicious. Nephi reveals she also made pudding for dessert, explaining it's a treat with eggs and cream, taught to her by Manuela. Yagan admires Manuela's influence on Nephi, but wonders if she has taught her anything unusual. Nephi confesses to Yagan that she made her try on some embarrassing outfits, but she's fine with it since only Nephi saw her. Yagan isn't sure about this, but Nephi serves him the pudding. He enjoys the pudding, marveling at its joyous and sweet flavors he didn't know existed. Suddenly, someone breaks the barrier around Yagan's castle. Yagan decides to let the intruder be, but they soon bypass his traps. He finds the intruder, Vallefer, in his dining hall, recalling him from the auction. Vallefer declares his intent to slay Yagan and take his powers as an archdemon, attempting to attack him. Yagan requests to finish his meal first, prompting Nephi to reassure him that they can make more pudding later. Despite Vallefer's impatience, Yagan defends himself against the attack. Vallefer, revealed to be a young girl in armor, is knocked unconscious by Yagan. Shocked by this realization, Yagan panics and attempts to give her cold medicine, but Nephi advises him against it, stating that she'll be fine without it. Yagan then takes Vallefer to a guest room, grateful that Nephi had cleaned it in case of such an event. When Vallefer wakes up and tries to attack Yagan again, he stops her, reminding her that she owes Nephi thanks for intervening, as he would have thrown her out otherwise. Vallefer questions why Yagan spared her despite her attempt to kill him, and Yagan reiterates that Nephi intervened to save her. Curious, Yagan asks Vallefer why she targeted him in the first place, and she admits to seeking power due to her own weakness. Yagan acknowledges the necessity of power for survival and queries why she singled him out. Vallefer explains that Yagan, as the newest archdemon and known as the Sorcerer Slayer, seemed like a feasible target, especially considering she intended to defeat him without using sorcery. Yagan acknowledges that he cannot nullify her racial ability, which are not considered sorcery, prompting Nephi's confusion. Yagan then discloses that Vallefer is actually a dragon, surprising him to encounter one of her kind. He notices her peculiar behavior, reminiscent of his own past as a child. Reflecting on his own experiences, Yagan realizes that before being a sorcerer or a dragon, Valefor is a child. Thus, he decides on a fitting response. Yagan informs Valefor that he will discipline her for challenging an archdemon, instructing her to assist Nephi for a week. He believes that during this time, he can impart some understanding of right and wrong, acknowledging that morality may not be his forte but as a villain, he can still teach her proper behavior. Valefor expresses concern about being eaten, alluding to the belief that consuming dragon flesh grants strength. Nephi queries Yagan about this belief, and he confirms the existence of ancient legends supporting it. Realizing Valefor's motive for concealing her identity, Yagan assures her he has no intention of devouring her, as it would leave a bitter taste in his mouth, much to her relief. Yagan ponders his next steps, recalling how older kids in the slums would offer him food to lift his spirits when he was on the verge of tears as a child. He then queries Nephi about any leftovers from lunch, and she provides Valefor with some soup. Initially hesitant, Valefor reluctantly accepts the soup after Yagan assures her it's a gesture of kindness to the weak. When she attempts to discard the food in frustration, Yagan warns her against wasting it, hinting at dire consequences if she does. Reluctantly, Valefor consumes the soup and finds it enjoyable. Pleased with her response, Yagan instructs her to assist Nephi after finishing her meal. Valefor questions Yagan about his reaction if she were to attack Nephi, to which Yagan asserts that attempting to flee would be futile given his knowledge of her true identity. He emphasizes Nephi's superior strength, making escape improbable. Later, Valefor helps Nephi with laundry under Yagan's watchful eye to prevent any risky behavior. While working, Valefor compliments Nephi's soup and expresses her freedom to utilize anything in her room. She admits to disliking Yagan's appearance and suggests she'd prefer a wider mouth on him, revealing her unconventional sense of aesthetics. Reflecting on their encounter, Yagan muses on Valefor's fear of his power and her acknowledgement of her defeat. Nephi reassures Valefor, stating that there's no need to fear Yagan as he only uses his power when necessary. However, Yagan questions this assertion, recalling instances where he has eliminated bandits and sorcerers with his abilities. Valefor concurs with Nephi's assessment, noting that Yagan didn't reveal the extent of his true power, finding him to be an enigmatic human. Curious about Valefor's plans, Nephi inquires about her intentions after their current situation. Valefor admits uncertainty, feeling inadequate to challenge other archdemons due to her lack of strength. Nephi empathizes with Valefor's desire for power, while Yagan muses on the unusual behavior of a dragon child living among humans, expecting dragons to be patient creatures. Valefor questions Nephi's loyalty to Yagan, prompting Nephi to explain that while she was bought by Yagan, he treats her with respect rather than as a slave, fostering her desire to remain with him indefinitely. She asks Valefor if she has a similar sense of belonging, to which Valefor responds negatively. The two depart, and over the following days, Valefor gradually relaxes and begins working without complaint. Meanwhile, Yagan remains at an impasse in his research, contemplating a visit to Marcosius Castle in search of relevant materials on demons. Believing that an archdemon like Marcosius would have conducted research on demons and possibly concealed his finding, Yagan considers the value of another sorcerer's input. Valefor then interrupts, informing him that dinner is ready. Yagan attempts to leave, but Valefor questions whether he's concerned she might attack him from behind, prompting him to recall Barbataz's words. Echoing Barbataz's response, Yagan tells her she's welcome to try, adding that if she loses, she'll have to work for him even longer. The three of them then share dinner, with Valefor apologizing to Yagan for her earlier interruption. Yagan forgives her, feeling reassured about Valefor's demeanor. He confides in Nephi his plan to take Valefor to investigate Marcosius Castle. Valefor expresses disbelief at the idea, likening it to sharing the former archdemon's knowledge with her. She questions Yagan's lack of concern about her potentially stealing his secrets, to which Yagan responds indifferently, stating that techniques and knowledge are meant to be taken. He admits to having stolen knowledge from the castle's previous owner, but Valefor wonders why he doesn't force her to obey him as well. Yagan explains that doing so would upset Nephi, emphasizing that regardless of Valefor's age or ability, she is just a child to him and should behave accordingly. He reassures her that he won't hold her actions against her, nearly bringing her to tears. Yagan wonders if Valefor's current state is somehow his fault, and he attempts to console her, though she insists she's not crying. He then suggests that obeying an archdemon like himself might be beneficial for Valefor, as it would deter others from harming her. Valefor acknowledges this but asserts that she's not a child. She offers to assist Yagan whenever he needs her. Later, as Valefor sleeps, Nephi reflects that she must have eased up after Yagan showed her he wasn't her enemy, recalling her own experience when she first arrived. Yagan notices Valifer clutching a spoon in her sleep and tries to remove it, only for her to grab his hand. In her dream, she addresses him as father, leading Yagan to believe she's dreaming about her parents. Nephi remarks that it feels like they have a child now, causing Yagan to feel embarrassed. Nephi, realizing her slip of tongue, hastily clarifies her statement. Yagan reflects on how absurd it is for an archdemon like himself to desire a normal life, but being around Nephi makes him long for it nonetheless. The scene shifts to Valifer, reflecting on her week in confinement under Jagan. She's been doing chores like cleaning, laundry, and cooking alongside Nephi. While the work is tiring, it's not too difficult, and she gets praised for doing well. She's puzzled by the relationship between Jagan and Nephi. Every morning, Nephi visits Jagan and stares at him for a while before starting her day. Once, Valifa tried to see what Nephi was doing, but Nephi was just observing Jagan from different angles. Nephi then whispered that tomorrow would be the day, leaving Valifa curious about its meaning. Jagan spends his days reading in the library and giving Nephi hands-on lessons in sorcery. Valifa is also puzzled by why Nephi sits on Jagan's lap, and she occasionally notices him trying to touch her head but then stopping. Valifa mentions that living there gives her a warm feeling, and she notes that they are planning to visit Marcosius's castle the next day. The scene then cuts to Jagan and the others at Manuela's shop, buying clothes for Valifa. Manuela thinks Valifa looks adorable in her new outfit, and jokes about keeping her, but Jagan insists she is not an object. After leaving the store, Valifa is clearly delighted with her new clothes. She thanks Jagan, who is pleased she likes them. She then holds both Jagan's and Nephi's hands. Jagan realizes he started to care for Valifa and wonders if it's a protective instinct. He finds it hard to believe he's developing such feelings and imagines Barbados would laugh at him for it. Chastel reflects on her relief at having delayed the manhunt for Jagan by surrendering her sacred sword. However, she doubts Jagan will ever appreciate her sacrifice. She wonders why she felt compelled to help and reassures herself that she doesn't want to come between Jagan and Nephi. She just wishes for them to live peacefully, start a family, and remember her occasionally. As she strolls through town, she imagines Jagan as a doting father. Suddenly, she spots Jagan walking with Valifa and Nephi. Seeing them together, she briefly wonders if Jagan and Nephi have had a child. Jagan quickly clarifies that he and Nephi haven't done anything like that. Valifa asks Jagan who Chastel is, but Jagan doesn't recognize her at first. Chastel feels a pang of disappointment until Nephi reminds Jagan who she is. Jagan explains he didn't recognize her without her armor, and introduces Chastel as one of Nephi's friends to Valifa. He then asks Chastel why she is dressed differently. Before she can answer, 3 Cerulean knights arrive, surprised to see Chastel with Jagan. They hope he isn't causing her any trouble. Valifa tries to fight the Cerulean knights, but Jagan stops her, saying that fighting here could hurt innocent bystanders. The knights then take Chastel away, and Nephi wonders if Chastel will be alright. Jagan replies that he's not sure, but Chastel has plenty of support. He thinks he can't get involved in her problems because, as a sorcerer, it would just complicate things for her. He then asks Valifa if the church ever did anything to her, and Valifa wonders if a sorcerer needs a reason to hate an angelic knight. Jagan mentions that it's natural to feel that way and hopes it won't cause more problems later. Later, we see Jagan and the others at Marcosius's castle, and Valifa is surprised to find such a big building underground. Jagan explains that it was probably built above ground and Marcosius used his magic to move it here. Valifa then smells something familiar, and tells Jagan she thinks dragons used to live here. She explains that the cave is shaped like the one she used to live in and has the scent of mana. Jagan asks her to see if she can find anything connected to dragons inside, and they head inside. Nephi feels a bit scared because of the gloomy surroundings, so Jagan holds her hand. They come across an inactive golem, and Jagan explains that Marcosius might have created it to guard this place. He warns them not to touch it to avoid accidentally activating it. They continue, and Valifa spots a casting circle ahead. She points out that the circle has draconic patterns. Jagan pats her head, praising her for the discovery. Nephi also gives Valifa a head pat. Jagan then asks Valifa if she knows what the circle's function. Valifa guesses that it's probably hiding a door and says she can open it. While Valifa uses her magic to open the door, Jagan notices Nephi looks like she wants something from him. He figures she might want a head pat, too. He asks Nephi to stay still and pats her head, which she enjoys. Jagan realizes she must have been jealous when he patted Valifa. He thinks about how she never acted this way when they were alone and finds it endearing. Once Valifa opens the door, they go inside and discover an underground library. Jagan guesses that this must be where Marcosius hid all his research. He tells them their goal is to gather all the books with information about demons and the Archdemon crest, and they all start searching. Val Lafer then asks Yagon if he can read minds since he figured out Nephi wanted a head pat earlier. Yagon explains that Nephi gives him clues, which he picks up on. Val Lafer admits she's jealous of this connection. Yagon reassures her that she's not an outsider and says that while he doesn't know how long dragons live, he's sure she'll be able to understand others without asking if she lives as long as Marcosia. Val Lafer reflects that Marcosius lived for 1,000 years and wonders if she can stay with Yagon for that long. Yagon tells her she can, but he won't stop her if she ever wants to leave. Val Lafer firmly states she will never leave. She then notices a book about the 12 sacred swords. Yagon quickly examines it and sees that the writing on the Archdemon crest is similar to the writing on the sacred sword. The words are different, but it's the same language. This makes Yagon think he can learn about his crest by studying the sacred swords. The scene then shifts to Chastel meeting Raphael Hirondel at the church. Raphael mentions he heard that Chastel was relieved of her duty as a sacred knight for defying orders and notes that she seems to have a good head on her shoulders. Chastel thanks him for the praise. Raphael then asks how many sorcerers she has slain so far. Chastel isn't surprised by his directness and reflects that he is known as the angelic knight who has killed the most sorcerers. She wonders if he intends to execute her for her apostasy, and tells him that the number of sorcerers she has killed isn't something to brag about. Her cerulean knights warn her not to be so blunt with Raphael, as they won't be able to protect her if things escalate. Raphael mentions it's been a long time since someone spoke to him so candidly, especially a woman, and suggests she can take pride in that even in the afterlife. The cerulean knights move to protect Chastel from Raphael when Clavel arrives. Clavel demands to know what Raphael is doing to his knights. Raphael dismisses Clavel as a mere bureaucrat. Clavel insists it's his duty to protect the knights and asks Raphael what he wants with Chastel's sacred sword. Raphael explains that sacred swords choose their wielders, and as long as the chosen one lives, no one else can use the sword. That's why he was thinking of killing Chastel. Clavel is shocked, but Raphael asserts that Clavel doesn't have the authority to dictate what a sacred sword wielder does with their blade. Chastel protests, saying that using their swords for personal whims would make them no better than thugs. Raphael, angered by her words, points his sword at her and tells Clavel that one of his knights is about to die unarmed. Understanding Raphael's intent, Clavel escorts Chastel to retrieve her sacred sword. The scene then shifts to Clavel handing the sword back to Chastel. He admits he's unsure if this is the right decision but trusts that she will overcome this challenge. Chastel accepts the sword and thanks Clavel. She reflects that it seemed like Raphael orchestrated events to ensure she got her sword back, and she wonders why. Later, she finds a letter in her room. Meanwhile, Jagon and Barbados are drinking in a bar. Barbados expresses disbelief that Jagon is living with a young girl now. Jagon asks how Barbados knows about this, and Barbados mentions that there are rumors around town about Jagon kidnapping a child. Jagon tries to leave, but Barbados stops him, insisting that Jagon should stay and enjoy the good booze he's treating him to. Jagon stays, and Barbados asks him about the kid. Jagon replies that it's someone Barbados knows, and Barbados realizes she's a sorcerer. He thinks the only female sorcerer around is Gremory, but she's supposed to hate men. Jagon notes that Barbados doesn't know Val Lafer is a child and a dragon. Then, Barbados remembers Val Lafer visiting Jagon recently, and wonders what happened to him. Jagon explains that he survived the attack thanks to luck, and Barbados is surprised Jagon tossed Val Lafer aside like the others. Barbados mentions rumors that Val Lafer is a dragon and suggests Jagon could have made potent catalysts from his corpse, thinking it's a waste. Hearing this, Jagon decides to keep Val Lafer's identity a secret. Barbados asks again about the child, and Jagon says he has adopted a child. This makes Barbados laugh, but then he stops joking. He warns Jagon that the church has sent a troublemaker after him, the sorcerer hunter Raphael. He has killed 499 sorcerers and is the most feared of the sacred sword users, known for taking down the most sorcerers. Jagon realizes he's Raphael's 500th target and wonders if someone can really kill that many sorcerers even with a sacred sword. Barbados mentions rumors that Raphael ate a dragon, but the church doesn't confirm it. Jagon notes Barbados is sharing a lot of information, and Barbados says he's trying to make amends. Barbados admits he thought befriending Jagon would be more beneficial than killing him. Jagon asks what he wants. Barbados requests to manage Marcosius Castle for Jagon, but Jagon declines, fearing Barbados would hide things. Barbados fails to see the issue. Jagon thinks Barbados, usually smart, is being naive. He offers sorcery tomes instead. Barbados agrees but wants to choose the tomes. Raphael enters the bar, and Jagon asks Barbados what he looks like. Barbados describes Raphael as a big, scarred old guy. Jagan realizes Raphael is standing behind them. Barbados then wonders what Raphael is doing, and the restaurant owner faints after seeing Raphael's face. The other customers run away, and Barbados tries to fight Raphael, but Yagun deactivates his magic. Barbados asks what he's doing, and Yagun tells him to settle down. Yagun explains that Raphael isn't here to fight, as he doesn't sense any animosity or bloodlust from him. He then invites Raphael to join them, pointing to some empty seats. Raphael comments that Yagun seems to have a good head on his shoulders, and they sit down to talk. Yagun realizes he doesn't really have anything to say to Raphael, and notices Barbados trying to use magic to heal the unconscious owner. He wonders why Barbados is using healing sorcery on someone who's just fainted. He then asks Raphael if he has any business with him. Raphael says he heard that Yagun has been dealing with one of his fellow knights, and wanted to check him out. Yagun realizes Raphael is talking about Chastel, and comments that he must not look very remarkable compared to Raphael. Raphael replies that Yagun looks every bit the villain the rumors suggest. Jagan mentions hearing that Raphael has a hobby of killing sorcerers and asks if he minds having two sorcerers right in front of him. Raphael says he only eliminates those who pose a significant threat. Jagan finds it hard to believe what he has heard and wonders if Raphael, who has reportedly killed nearly 500 sorcerers, could be the same person. Raphael then asks if Jagan has fought Chastel before and if she was strong enough to be a threat. Jagan says she was more formidable than anyone he has faced. Raphael comments that this makes her a serious threat to the church. Jagan is puzzled and asks what he means. Raphael explains that Chastel opposed the church's hunt for the Archdemon Jagan. This opposition gives the church enough reason to dispose of her. Jagan can't believe Chastel put herself in such a precarious position, noting that she never seemed like much of a survivor. Raphael agrees and tries to leave, saying this was all he wanted to know. Jagan realizes Raphael came to confirm the link between him and Chastel, likely looking for a reason to strike her down. He stops Raphael from leaving and mentions that Chastel has many friends in this town who would mourn her death. He warns Raphael that this town is his territory and he will regret overstepping his bounds. Raphael remarks that Jagan's threat doesn't sound like something an archdemon would say. Jagan replies that as an archdemon, he can afford to be arrogant. Raphael laughs and leaves. Barbados then asks Jagan if it's okay to let Raphael go and suggests they should chase him down and kill him. Jagan tells Barbados to go, and Barbados wonders if Jagan wants him to die. Jagan clarifies that he wants Barbados to check on Chastel. Barbados is confused about why he should do that, but Jagan says it should be quick and easy with his teleportation sorcery. Barbados asks Jagan if he's serious about helping Chastel, as she is an angelic knight. Jagan tells him to just go, offering extra spell tomes as an incentive. Barbados agrees and leaves. Jagan realizes he didn't pay the bill. Jagan returns to his castle and notices Nephi is still awake. Vallefer has fallen asleep in her lap while waiting for him. Nephi tells Jagan that Vallefer worked hard today, helping to carry all the books they took from Marcosius Castle to the library. She wanted them ready for Jagan to read. Nephi mentions that Vallefer told her Jagan said she could stay with her for 1,000 years. Jagan thinks that dragons live long lives, and anyone who can share that time with them is precious. This explains Vallefer's vendetta against whoever killed her dragon parents. He wonders if he should get rid of Raphael before he encounters Vallefer. Nephi expresses that it would be great if she could also stay with Jagan for 1,000 years. Jagan assures her that she is obviously going to stay with him forever. Nephi is happy to hear this, and they lock eyes. Jagan notices how charming Nephi looks and smells tonight, realizing she must have taken a bath earlier. He tries to kiss her, but Barbados interrupts them by teleporting in. Barbados says he has bad news. Jagan is annoyed at being disturbed at such a critical moment. Barbados explains that Chastel has been poisoned by a drink. Jagan changes gears, deciding to treat Chastel, and he asks Nephi for help. The noise wakes up Vallefer, and Jagan tells her she can go back to sleep. However, she notices an angelic knight and tries to attack Chastel, but Jagan stops her. He assures her that Chastel is his guest and asks if she hates angelic knights. Vallefer explains that Jagan should have realized it was an angelic knight who killed her parents, which led her to become a sorcerer for revenge. Jagan asks if she's the one who harmed her parents, and Vallefer says no. He advises her that killing Chastel won't hurt the one she truly wants revenge on. It will only create more enemies and obstacles. Vallefer questions if Jagan knows anything about revenge, and he explains it's about making targets suffer endlessly until they beg for death. Simple revenge doesn't bring solace. Jagan admits he tried revenge once, but killing the target instantly didn't satisfy him. That's why he wants to teach her proper revenge tactics, using the castle's torture materials. Vallefer understands, but Barbados wonders if it's appropriate to teach this to a child. The scene shifts to Chastel waking up in bed, finding Jogon beside her. He credits Nephi for treating her, reminding her she was poisoned. He asks if she remembers being summoned by an anonymous letter and meeting someone from the church. They discussed a reconciliation faction advocating coexistence with sorcerers, opposing killing them. Chastel explains she never knew about such a faction, and the person never showed his face. He claimed it was safer that way, but she felt she recognized him somehow. He invited her to join, and she wondered if he served under Cardinal Clavel, who had helped her before. Confused, she was given time to decide and was told to trust him if she ever needed help, mentioning the name Orabas. She asked if that was his name, and he said it was like the leader's name, meant to protect her. After he left, she wondered if she could trust him but knew she should act quickly for her safety. Back in her room, she drank tea from her table and got poisoned. Barbados brought her to Jogon's place. Jogon asks if she knows who poisoned her, and she suspects Raphael, though they doubt he would use poison. Jogon suggests she make herself comfortable, but Chastel asks him to stay a bit longer. Jogon hesitates, suggesting she ask Nephi instead, but Chastel feels disappointed. Jogon decides to stay and read quietly, not wanting to disturb Nephi. Chastel wonders why she stopped him, questioning her feelings. She realizes she wants to be a part of Nephi and Jogon's happiness and wonders how to make it happen. The next day, Chastel is wearing a maid outfit, and Jogon says she can stay but must work. He advises her to listen to Nephi. Chastel sees Vallefer with Jogon and tries to talk, but Vallefer rudely asks her not to and insults her before leaving. Confused, Chastel wonders what she did wrong. Jogon explains Vallefer's father was killed by a sacred sword wielder, so she blames all angelic knights. Chastel suggests leaving, but Jogon says to ignore Vallefer as she's too proud to cause real trouble. Later, Jogon hears Chastel scream and finds her scared of a frog. He realizes Vallefer has been pranking her. Chastel thinks Jogon is too lenient with Vallefer. More frogs are thrown, and Jogon thinks Chastel is useless outside of battle. He's relieved she's feeling better, and wonders if she was worried about her. Meanwhile, Vallefer writes in her journal about the angelic knight's visit, finding it easy to prank her. She feels sorry for her and finds it boring. Jogon enters her room, and the scene changes to Nephi and Chastel bathing. Nephi apologizes for Vallefer's behavior, and Chastel thanks her. She enjoys the bath Jogon prepared. Chastel notes they often bathe together and playfully wash each other. Chastel feels a bit awkward hearing this, and Nephi says that Vallefer is actually a kind girl, adding they might become friends eventually. Chastel realizes the misunderstanding, making Nephi blush when she gets what Chastel thought. Later, Vallefer asks Jogon if he's going to scold her for what she did to Chastel. Jogon advises her to be more considerate, especially during meals. Vallefer agrees, surprised that Jogon is lenient. He asks if she wants to stay here, assuring her they'll support her decision. She can answer later if she has things to do, but he and Nephi will be there for her. Later, Vallefer writes in her journal that Jogon asked if she wants to stay with him forever, which surprised her. She felt happy and warm since coming to this place, loving Nephi's hugs and Jogon's head pats. However, she fears that staying will make her forget about her revenge. She wonders if her desire for revenge is that flimsy, but her inner self insists she can never forget her hatred. Vallefer concludes she can't stay and leaves after thanking Jogon for everything. The scene shifts to Nephi informing Jogon that Vallefer is gone, surprising him. Vallefer then enters Markosha's castle, noticing someone following her. She heads to the gate, thinking she can find enough power here to kill a sacred sword wielder. She recalls Jogon previously arranging her entrance, but knows sneaking in now would betray him. Resolute, she proceeds, but Raphael appears behind her. Recognizing Raphael as her father's killer from his scent and appearance, Vallefer tries to attack him with her claws. Raphael, unaware of who she is, moves to counterattack, and Vallefer realizes she's going to lose. She reflects that she should have known she wouldn't stand a chance against a sacred sword wielder without a plan. At the last moment, Jogon saves her. Raphael is surprised that Jogon can stop his sacred sword, and Vallefer wonders why Jogon is there. Jogon explains he had a convenient mode of transportation and knew she would come here. Barbados, annoyed, says he's not just a mode of transportation. Vallefer asks why Jogon is helping her despite her betrayal. Jogon tells her not to worry about small things, saying he understands how she feels. She apologizes to him. Nephi, from the castle, asks Jogon if he is alright. He assures her he's fine and will return soon after handling another matter. He tells her to wait for him and warns Raphael about the consequences of overstepping boundaries. Raphael is surprised to see a sorcerer defending someone else, and Jogon declares that Vallefer is his daughter. Raphael acknowledges this reason, and Yagan prepares to attack, telling Raphael to defend with all his might if he doesn't want to die. Raphael surrounds his blade with flames of purification, claiming these flames once burned away the sorcery of an archdemon. Yagan notices his magic circles breaking. Valeifer asks why Yagan provoked Raphael into taking the fight seriously. Yagan replies that he promised to teach her how to take revenge, explaining that drawing out an enemy's full potential and then crushing it is a way to drive them to despair. Yagan attacks Raphael with his magic, and Raphael's flames can't destroy his casting circle. Raphael wonders what's happening. Yagan explains that a sacred sword had cut through his sorcery before, but he has since acquired Markosha's legacy, which he used to create a new defensive measure. He says this spell can draw mana from the environment to sustain itself, making it resistant to Raphael's purifying flames. The spell pushes back Raphael, and Yagan names it the Heaven's Scale. Raphael attacks Yagan, but Yagan dodges and blocks Raphael's next strike with Heaven's Scale. The Heaven's Scale breaks after 3 attacks, disappointing Yagan. He mentions that it needs more improvement before it's complete. Raphael tries to attack again, but Yagan blows him away with normal sorcery, thinking that Raphael shouldn't be able to stand after such a critical blow. However, Raphael survives and acknowledges Yagan's incredible power, surprising Yagan. Meanwhile, Chastel approaches Nephi and asks where Yagan is. Nephi explains that Barbados took him to Valeifer, and Chastel worries if Valeifer is alright. Nephi assures her that Valeifer is fine and mentions that Yagan is defending her from someone. Chastel considers helping but is conflicted about aiding a sorcerer. She questions what she can achieve by going there, and whether she is willing to side with sorcerers now that the church wants her dead. She realizes her motivations are selfish, and asks Nephi if she is okay. Chastel wonders why Nephi isn't going after Yagan, and Nephi replies that Yagan told her to wait. Chastel expresses envy towards Nephi, and Nephi says she feels the same towards Chastel. Chastel is puzzled and asks why Nephi would envy her. Nephi explains that it's because Chastel can go after Yagan. She mentions that Yagan is very powerful and may not need help, but she still wants to support him. Chastel reminds Nephi that she is Yagan's enemy, and suggests that Nephi should ignore his orders and go after him. Nephi says she can't leave, hugging Chastel. She explains that it's her duty to stay and welcome Yagan home. Chastel admits that it feels foolish to claim she's their enemy after they've helped her so much, but she's still an angelic knight. She confesses that being poisoned has affected her deeply. She doesn't understand the purpose of her sword anymore and doesn't want to turn it against Yagan. She wants to fight by his side. Nephi tells her that she seems to already know what she wants to do. Nephi recalls that when they first talked, Chastel said Yagan seemed lonely to her, and she was envious to hear that. Nephi thought she was the only one who could understand Yagan, but she was also happy to know that others could see him for who he is. Chastel realizes that Nephi has grown stronger by loving Yagan and being loved by him. Nephi asks if Chastel feels better now. Chastel understands that Nephi was trying to comfort her, and wonders if Nephi feels she didn't do well. Nephi assures her that she's just happy Nephi would go so far to help her. Nephi mentions that this is natural since they are friends. Chastel thanks Nephi and jumps into the teleport gate. The scene shifts to Markosha's castle, where Raphael's wounds are healing. Yagan thinks the rumors about dragon flesh granting special powers must be true. He tells Valeifer to start thinking about how she wants to torture Raphael because he won't die easily. Raphael comments that he is really hated here. Valeifer responds that it's because he killed her father, the sage dragon Oropus. Yagan is shocked to learn that Oropus, the legendary dragon who lived for a millennium, was Valether's father and that Raphael managed to kill him. Valeifer explains that her father used his wisdom to help people, and was called the Sage Dragon out of respect for his immense knowledge. One day, a group of angelic knights came for him. She doesn't know why, but her father left with them and never returned. After 7 days, she went to search for him and found a sacred knight drinking his blood with a sacred sword stabbed into her father's corpse. This sight made her faint, and she couldn't believe that the same humans her father helped had betrayed him. Hearing that Valeifer is Oropus' daughter, Raphael charges at her, but Yagan intercepts him. Raphael charges at Valeifer again, and she attacks him with a blast. However, Chastel arrives and stops both of their attacks. Yagan is surprised to see this, and Valeifer asks Chastel what she is doing. Chastel acknowledges that Valeifer hates her and doesn't mind because she intruded on her home, but she asks if they can talk civilly at least once. Yagan says it's time for Valetfer to cooperate, but first asks Raphael what he's doing. He explains that as a sorcerer, he doesn't care if an angelic knight dies, but there's no satisfaction in killing someone who seems eager to die. Valeifer is confused, and Yagan clarifies that Raphael's bloodlust vanished the moment he heard Oropus' name. Chastel realizes it was Raphael who summoned her with the letter, and that he belongs to the reconciliation faction. Yalgon recalls Chastel mentioning Oropus before but didn't expect someone from the church to mention the legendary dragon. Yalgon asks Raphael to explain, but before he can, a golem emerges from the castle. Seeing its miasma, Yalgon initially thinks it's a demon but realizes it's a golem modeled after a demon. He notices it's absorbing mana from its surroundings to power itself and worries that it will drain everything around it if it continues. Val Leifer identifies it as the guardian of the Archdemon's castle. Yalgon speculates that the clash of two sacred swords must have awakened it. Barbados, concerned, asks what they should do, fearing they might die if the golem continues to drain mana at this rate. Yalgon tells everyone to calm down and tries to use his crest to command the golem to stop, but realizes it only works on actual demons. The golem then attacks with a blast. Yalgon manages to save Chastel but can't reach Val Leifer. However, Raphael protects Val Leifer, which angers Yalgon for targeting his daughter. Yalgon then uses his Heaven's Scale spell to shatter the golem into pieces. He checks on Val Leifer, who says she's fine, but Raphael is badly injured. Yalgon sees the wound is near Raphael's heart, and worries that even with dragon power, he might not survive. He asks Raphael why he did it, and Raphael says he was just doing his duty and tries to stand but can't. Yalgon remarks that it's clear Raphael is seeking some sort of redemption and asks him to explain everything. Raphael looks directly into Valifer's eyes and sees in them the projection of the image of the wise dragon, the father of the child he made an orphan. However, it is revealed that he wasn't the one responsible for Aroba's execution. Valifer argues that he saw with his own eyes the angelic knight devouring his father's corpse, so Raphael questions whether the dragon offspring truly believes that a mere human could defeat a mythical entity. Faced with this questioning, Valifer now pays attention to Raphael, who explains that he went after the wise dragon, Oroba, to kill a specific enemy. The dragon accepted their request because the target was a demonic entity. Valifer hesitates to believe in the existence of demons, and Raphael understands, especially since he himself thought they had all disappeared from history. However, one of these beings emerged in modern times accompanied by a legion of angelic knights and brought the great dragon to his death. Raphael mentions that he saw the shadow of a demon and therefore started researching ancient texts to find a way to combat them. Faced with these facts, the dragon girl questions if her father met his end at the hands of a demon, until Raphael explains that Oroba defeated the enemy at the cost of his own life. Confused, the child no longer knows whom to hate, but the knight advises her to exchange hatred for pride, because her father gave his life to defend his daughter and everyone inhabiting this world. However, if she believes that having Raphael Hyrandal's head can restore her sense of justice, the knight willingly surrenders. Nonetheless, demons are a real threat, and if they return to this world, where the church and the sorcerers fight amongst themselves, this explains how the creature returns to normal even after having its stone body destroyed. Undeterred, Chastel cuts the rocks into tiny pieces, preventing them from reassembling. Zagan realizes she might have defeated him in their earlier fight had she done this. Then he attacks again with the celestial phosphorus, ending the battle in a mysterious way that leaves Chastel questioning what happened. Zagan explains that he invented a spell called Celestial Scale, a shield that absorbs mana from the environment to increase its durability. By inverting the shield and launching it inside the creature, the shield burned the absorbed mana, and the black flames indicated that the mana itself was the fuel. Therefore, this is a 2-in-1 spell that still needs to be improved to face more powerful demons. Impressed by the wizard's inventiveness, Chastel compliments her companion. In turn, he surprises her by calling her by her name for the first time, leaving her bewildered. Zagan responds that a friend of Nephi deserves that respect, and this statement humbles the knight a bit. She claims that she didn't come just because of the elf, but because she believes she is capable of fighting alongside the Archdemon. Zagan finds it strange to ally with an angelic knight but recognizes the importance of having such a powerful ally. Meanwhile, Valifer draws everyone's attention to the worrying condition of Raphael Hyrand, who is terribly weakened by his battle wounds. Although healing isn't his specialty, Zagan attempts to heal Raphael with a spell. Raphael acknowledges Chastel's actions, stating that she has become a symbol of the fight for reconciliation. He assures her that the followers of the cause will see the Maiden of the Sacred Sword as the legitimate leader of the movement. Chastel questions whether Raphael used Oroba's name because no one would believe in him otherwise. The knight explains that this is true, but it goes deeper than that. It was the wise dragon himself who decided to create this faction, and appointed Raphael for this task by offering his own blood to save his life. Given these facts, it's only fair to name the resistance after the entity that sacrificed its life for it. Putting that aside, Zagan wants to know why Raphael had killed so many sorcerers. Raffle reveals that it was never of his own volition or for pleasure. He was constantly attacked by mages wherever he went. Although his intention was always friendly coexistence among all, he smiled at the sorcerers to demonstrate his peaceful intent, but even that didn't deter the mages, who forced the warrior to defend himself. Not believing what he just heard, Zagan recalls that Raffle was extremely provocative at the bar, but Raffle explains that in his mind, it was just an innocent warning that Chastel was in danger. Chastel herself remembers that Raffle asked her how many sorcerers she had killed in her career. Raphael explains that if she had killed many, she wouldn't be fit to lead the cause. Speaking of which, he asks the captain to return to her post in the church because he will deal with those who try to eliminate her, at least as long as he remains alive. Chessel asks if the warrior knows who tried to kill her, and he replies that he's surprised the woman hadn't noticed. Then, he asks Aroba's daughter to perform his final task before he hands over his head. Ignoring this question, Valifer asks what kind of dragon Orobos was to the human, and Raffle replies that the moments he fought alongside him were the best of his life. With that said, the Lord leaves, while Zagan extends his hand to take his new daughter home again. Balefur expresses doubts about avenging Raffle, and the sorcerer understands the reason, although he thinks that untreated hatred could become something more dangerous in the future. Back home, Nephi welcomes her friends joyfully and receives a hug from her stepdaughter. Meanwhile, Cardinal Cloudwell laments that the 3 Cerulean Knights haven't found Chastel yet. Despite the failure, His Eminence releases the subordinates for rest, considering that the search has only just begun. After the warriors withdraw, the Cardinal laments alone again, this time about the fact that the Maiden of the Sacred Sword hasn't died yet. According to him, those who stand by the sorcerers are as dangerous as the sorcerers themselves. If it weren't for the objection of the other cardinals, the captain would have already been executed in his view. To worsen his situation, Raffle got involved in the same situation, which means 2 fewer sacred swords for the church. For this reason, Cloudwell hates the fact that the poison didn't kill Chastel. Had it succeeded, her sacred sword would have passed into other hands, hands that would be free from the sin she committed. It has always been like this. Those who are not worthy to bear such a weapon must face the consequence, like the cowards they are for hesitating to eliminate evil. So they will have to face his wrath. Suddenly, Raffle arrives, literally kicking the door open. However, his weakness makes him fall to his knees. Immediately, the Cardinal offers him some liquid he took from his chest, claiming it can treat his wounds. However, the Lord of the Knights cuts the hand of the clergy leader, stating that he has no interest in being poisoned. In response, Cloudwell falls to the ground and screams in pain and despair. Raffle shoves his foot into the mouth of the religious man, demanding silence from the one who will be his first victim by his own will. With no one else to stabbed by one of the sacred swords he loves so much. The sound of the blade piercing flesh echoes outside the church, and Raffle warns that he will meet the clergyman soon in the afterlife. The next day, Chastel discovers that Cladwell was the mastermind behind the crime that poisoned her. Despite this revelation, she is determined to return to the church and change its structure from within. As she heads for the exit, she tries to say goodbye to Valifer, who initially ignores her. Embarrassed, Chastel turns around, but Valifer suddenly asks her to come back home soon. Overwhelmed with emotion, Chastel breaks down in tears and confesses that she doesn't know if she is capable of leading such an important organization. However, she promises to give it her all to make it work. Lord Raffle, supporting her, assures Chastel that he will be there if she needs help. Surprised by his presence, Chastel gets a big fright, thinking he had died. Raffle explains that dragon blood with elven healing truly works, causing him to hang up his sword and retire as an angelic knight. Raphael had come to the castle to surrender to Aroba's daughter, as promised, but instead of executing him, she decreed that he must serve Zagan and Ophelia. The former commander will be useful in the sorcerer's research on the Archmans, as well as being a great cook who helps the elf in the kitchen. Moreover, Zagan feels a strange familiarity with Raphael. Meanwhile, Valifer notices that the butler is missing one arm, so she uses a spell to create a limb with the material she herself used. Finally, Chastel realizes that she is the only one who has to leave, and she breaks down crying like an abandoned child, despite being able to return whenever she wants. Throwing a tantrum, she asks if Zagan would be happy if she came back to visit, and she becomes enchanted with life again when he confirms that he would be. Outside the conversation, Barbakos appears, asking for food for breakfast. Zagan orders the sorcerer to protect Chastel for now, of course, for a fee. Barbakos accepts the babysitting job and leaves. After all that, Nephi lets her feelings slip and hugs the Archdemon, seeming distressed about something. Immediately, he apologizes for leaving her behind the previous night, while Raffle covers the eyes of young Valifer. The scene then cuts to Valifer writing in her diary again. She reflects on how she never expected to be able to write in it again. She notes that she is back in the castle once more and realizes that running away was futile. There seems to be no escaping an archdemon. Despite her initial impulse to tear out the last page she wrote, she decides to keep it as a reminder. Val Leifer writes about her relief when Yagun came to her rescue, with both him and Nephi protecting her. Raphael and Chastel also stood by her side, which was unexpected. She acknowledges that she doesn't know how to repay them but expresses her desire to show her gratitude little by little. To achieve this, she knows she needs to become stronger, and she resolves to continue this diary. She then writes about the newest member of their household, Raphael. Once a sacred sword wielder, she initially thought he had killed her father. However, she learned that he actually respects her father deeply and even lost his arm protecting her. Although she is still uncertain about her feelings towards him, she admits that his cooking is delicious. In this regard, he is a good match for Nephi. Val Leifer mentions that Raphael knows a much wider variety of sweets, and she is always the first to try anything he makes. However, she also notes one problem she has with him. Whenever she tries to observe Nephi and Yagun's couple activity, Raphael tries to interfere. This has become a consistent source of conflict between them. She explains that earlier today, Nephi made some macarons after Raphael taught her the recipe, and Yagun remarked that the confections looked cute. Raphael explained to Jagan that the name macarons is derived from a type of pasta called macaroni. Although they are completely different dishes, their preparation methods share some similarities. He then shared a bit of history. An ancient sorcerer named Caesar Cardia had an apprentice named Nancy de Lorraine, who created macarons. Curious about how to eat them, Jagan asked for guidance. Nephi instructed him to simply take a macaron with his hand and eat it, warning him to be careful as they are quite delicate. Shyly, Jagan requested that Nephi feed him. She agreed, and as she tried to feed him, Val Leifer watched intently. Raphael attempted to stop her from looking, but she skillfully dodged him and witnessed Nephi feeding Jagan. Jagan, delighted by the texture, remarked that he had no idea such food existed in this world. He then asked Nephi if she would like him to feed her in return. Val Leifer tried to see this exchange too, but Raphael managed to cover her eyes, telling her she was too young to witness such things. Val Leifer protested, pointing out that Nephi and Jagan were so shy they were embarrassed to even hold hands, and at this rate, it would take them decades to kiss. Nephi and Jagan then noticed Val Leifer and Raphael. Val Leifer declared it a mutual defeat, as they had been noticed and did not want to disturb the couple. Nephi then summoned Val Leifer, informing her that Chastel was coming over to spend the night. Nephi planned to throw a feast for her, so they were heading into town to shop. The scene then shifted to the three of them in town. The townsfolk observed that they looked happy together and were pleased to see them getting along well. Jagan thought to himself that Nephi had truly made a home in this town. After finishing their shopping, Jagan asked if they needed anything else. Nephi responded that they were done but suggested dropping by Manuela's shop for a bit. Jagan, though not thrilled, agreed, knowing that Manuela always caused trouble. At Manuela's shop, Nephi gifted her some macarons. Manuela was delighted and mentioned that they had just received new stock. She asked Nephi to try them out. Nephi, pressed for time, initially declined, but Manuela insisted they do it quickly. Manuela then took Nephi to the changing room. Meanwhile, Jagan noticed a phonograph in the shop. Val Leifer asked Jagan what the object was, and he explained that it was a phonograph used to listen to music. He mentioned that various sorcerers specialized in sounds and music, and one of them, named Victor I, had created this instrument. Jagan noted that this particular phonograph was an antique. Manuela then informed him that it was broken and could not play music. She explained that some street urchins had found it and hoped to sell it, but none of the shops were interested, so they left it with her. Jagan reminisced about his own childhood, when he used to snatch things that might sell, and decided that he would buy the phonograph. He handed Manuela a bag full of coins. She protested that it was too much, but Jagan insisted that it was the right price, even though it was broken. He confidently stated that he could fix it easily. The scene then shifted to Chastel and Barbados waiting at the castle for Jagan and the others to return. Chastel noted that they were a little early, and Raphael reassured her to be patient as the others should be on their way back. He then left the room. Chastel remarked to Barbados that it had been a while since they last met, and soon after, Nephi and the others returned to the castle. Chastel expressed her gratitude for being invited over, and Jagan observed that she seemed to be doing well. Chastel mentioned that she had been extremely busy lately, and hadn't had time to go home. She explained that Clavel's death had been declared an accident, which resulted in her taking on nearly all of his unfinished clerical work. Jagan then noticed Barbados and pointed out that he hadn't invited him. Barbados replied that it wouldn't hurt to feed one more person. Nephi told Chastel and Barbados to make themselves at home while she prepared their meal. Chastel offered to help, but Nephi insisted that she should rest for the day. Chastel still insists on helping Nephi, and Nephi eventually accepts her assistance. The scene then cuts to Chastel in the kitchen with Nephi and Val Lafer. Val Lafer asks if Chastel can cook. Chastel admits that she can, but she is not as skilled as Nephi. While working, she accidentally knocks over a basket of vegetables, but Val Lafer catches it with magic. Meanwhile, Jagan is seen working on the phonograph. Barbados approaches him, and Jagan warns him not to touch anything, explaining that there are barriers in place that could blow his arm off. Barbados acknowledges this and asks what Jagan is working on. Jagan is surprised that Barbados has never seen a phonograph before and explains that these devices can be surprisingly fun to tinker with. Jagan successfully fixes the phonograph, and Barbados shifts the conversation to a more serious topic, telling Jagan that something needs to be done about Chastel. Jagan asks if the people from the church are still trying to kill her, but Barbados reveals that the situation is more complicated. He recounts a night when Chastel was working late. She went to make tea but stumbled over the paperwork that had taken her hours to organize. Barbados, unable to watch her struggle, helped her collect the papers. She then nearly toppled a bookshelf, but Barbados stopped it from falling on her. He confesses that he can't sleep because he is constantly worried about her, and at this rate, one of them is going to die from exhaustion. Jagan nonchalantly replies that he wouldn't mind if Barbados died and offers to treat him to a drink if he wants. The scene shifts back to the kitchen, where Nephi tastes the soup that Chastel made. It tastes terrible, and Nephi tells Val Lafer that it's even worse than the muddy water she had to drink as a child. Val Lafer is puzzled since Chastel tried the soup herself and thought it was fine. Nephi decides she has to do something to keep this awful soup off their dinner table. She tells Chastel that they will serve the soup for breakfast tomorrow instead and suggests that Chastel rest in her room for now. The scene then shifts to Jagan playing the phonograph before dinner, revealing that it is working perfectly now. Everyone is delighted by the music it produces. Jagan mentions that they can change the music in this device depending on the occasion. Raphael shares that he once visited a dance hall in a port town that had one of these, and Val Lafer curiously asks what a dance hall is. Raphael explains that in a dance hall, men and women dance hand in hand to the music from a phonograph. Jagan remarks on Raphael's worldliness. Raphael then recounts how sorcerers present at the dance hall attacked him, leading to his banishment from the premises. Everyone is surprised to hear this. During dinner, Chastel praises Nephi's cooking, commenting on its refreshing fragrance and complex flavor profile. Barbados, surprised by Chastel's discerning palate, teases her, causing her to become angry. He then jests that she should stop sleeping with a stuffed animal if she doesn't like his comments. Chastel, shocked, asks how he knows about Poco, her stuffed animal. Jagan realizes Barbados is drunk, having already consumed a bottle of wine. Chastel accuses Barbados of peeping on her, but he denies it, albeit in a way that makes her doubt. Jagan intervenes, suggesting Chastel ignore Barbados since he's just drunk. Jagan, concerned about the situation, refrains from revealing that Barbados is actually guarding Chastel. Nephi informs Chastel that it was Barbados who brought her to safety when she collapsed from the poison. Grateful, Chastel thanks Barbados, who deflects the thanks, saying she should save it for when she has grown into a finer woman. He adds that he prefers older women. Chastel, still disturbed, recalls that Barbados never denied peeping on her and exposed the existence of Poco. She cries in embarrassment as the phonograph suddenly breaks down, producing terrible sounds. Raphael quickly shuts it off. Val Lafer reminds everyone not to fight during meals, and Jagan tells Barbados to apologize, asserting that the chaos is his fault. Barbados refuses to apologize and instead compliments the soup, saying it's really good. Nephi, confused, points out that she didn't serve any soup. Val Lafer reveals that she gave Barbados the soup Chastel made. Nephi asks if he's okay, and Barbados loses consciousness. Chastel, realizing her soup was that bad, bursts into tears. The scene then cuts to Chastel sleeping at night, while Jagan works on fixing the phonograph again. Nephi approaches him and mentions that she had a good time today. She admits she never had a meal with such a large group before and asks why he bought the phonograph. Jagan explains it was a whim, but he also wanted to enjoy some good music. He mentions that it's almost fixed now. Nephi observes that whenever Jagan reminisced about the past before, he seemed sad, but today he was different. Jagan reflects that when he lived on the streets, he had neither a home nor regular food, but he did have friends to share bread with. He realizes he might have been less lonely back then than he thought and notes that he hasn't returned to the streets since coming to the castle. He wonders if anyone he knew back then is still alive and asks Nephi if she would mind if he returned the phonograph to the streets. She assures him she wouldn't. Jagan then finishes fixing the phonograph, and they listen to the music together. Val, Lafer, and Raphael watch them from a distance, and Jagan asks Nephi if she would like to dance. She agrees, but they both remember they don't know how to dance. Raphael offers to teach them and shows them how to dance. After Raphael leaves, Jagan and Nephi continue to dance alone. While dancing, Nephi stumbles, and Jagan catches her, saying he wouldn't mind staying like this forever. The next day, the citizens of Chionides are surprised to hear music coming from a back alley and see children dancing happily to it. The people join in, celebrating like it's a festival, bringing joy to everyone. This brings an end to our episode. If you enjoyed it, then don't forget to like, share, and subscribe our channel for more anime recaps.